All right, hello everyone. Hello. Welcome to Opening Night Live, our Week 7 live stream event of our Fill the Seats fundraising campaign. Now, I know I may not be the person you were expecting to MC tonight's event. Beth Ann had a commitment that she wasn't able to escape. As you all know, the theater is run by a volunteer board, and we volunteer our time, and sometimes we do our best, and we're all working with what we got. So tonight I'll be filling in. My name is Rowan Kempf. I've kind of been helping behind the camera for the fundraising campaign, so it's nice to meet you all finally. Let us know if you're watching tonight in the comment section. Hello to Nicki Paluga. He's looking forward to the interview. Aren't we all? We've got a wonderful guest tonight in Nicky Paluga, and we're looking forward to speaking with her. But before we get started, I just want to give an update on where we stand with the Fill the Seats fundraising campaign as a whole. So it's week 7. We've been sold out week to week, filling 200 seats a week, and currently our overall campaign goal is sitting just above $26,000, which is unbelievable. We never expected to see so many people pitching in and contributing their money and supporting the theater. It's been overwhelming, to say the least. And over 26,000, that means we're under 10,000 of reaching our final goal of 36,000. So we hope that you can continue to support us week by week. And we will keep providing you with free and hopefully entertaining content day to day. Hello to everyone joining us in the chat. So like I said, we've got Nicky Paluga with us tonight. Before we get started, we will be enjoying a wonderful opening piano performance by Mr. Adam Jarvis, who has played for us before. So without further ado, let us enjoy a piano performance by Mr. Adam Jarvis. Here he is. about it, folks? What an excellent performance. How about a virtual round of applause for Mr. Adam Jarvis? Okay. All right, without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce Nicki Paluga, who is joining us all the way from the West Coast. That's right, Sunnyside, California, in Los Angeles. Jeanette Stafford says hello from North Carolina. I have family ties to Galleon and am part of Nicki's husband's extended family. Thanks for joining us tonight, Jeanette. It'll be a very wonderful conversation with Nicki. And without further ado, I will introduce her. So joining us tonight is Nicki Paluga, a Los Angeles-based writer who has worked on the staffs of The OA on Netflix, Ash vs. Evil Dead on the Starz Network, Resurrection on ABC, Perception with TNT, Noir on the Starz Network, and Legend of the Seeker with ABC's Tribune. So after graduating from Galleon High School, Nicki studied at Ohio Northern University in Ada, Ohio, where she concentrated in theater, believe it or not, and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Communications in 2002. Her undergraduate education was supplemented with 2 study abroad programs, including an Actors Conservatory program in Edinburgh, Scotland. Wow, way across the pond, and a unique shipboard education called Semester at Sea, which sounds really interesting, and I'm gonna love hearing all about that. Nicki is also a graduate of Columbia University's MFA film program, where she received numerous awards and fellowships. Congratulations. During her time at Columbia, Nicki penned a supernatural horror feature entitled The Swiss Village, which garnered the Zachy Gordon Award for Excellence in Screenwriting, the Catherine Parlin Hurst Screenwriting Award. It attracted invitations to both the Nantucket Screenwriters Colony and the IFP Film Directing Lab, and landed on the 2010 Blood List, which sounds terrifying, but very prestigious as well. She has also done feature assignments for Sam Raimi, who I've heard of, and Rob Tappert's Horror Shingle Ghost House Pictures for Disney, and has developed autobiographical material at HBO with Groundswell, Michael London, and Deborah Granick producing. And what's she up to nowadays, you may ask? Well, currently Nicki is developing several projects and joining the Poor People's Campaign. So, without further ado, I am going to hop over to Zoom and bring in Miss Nicki Paluga. Please bear with us. Okay, here we are. Can you hear us, Nicki?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for that lovely intro, and Adam, thank you for that awesome piano playing.
Yeah, it was very nice. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is a pleasure to have you, and everyone is looking forward to the interview. So what do you say? Let's jump right into it.
Let's do it.
So right now, if sounds from your bio, like you've got an exciting career in Los Angeles, and we'll get to that soon, but people want to know, tell us how you were involved with Galleon Community Theater and what got you involved in the theater.
I was thinking about this. In my earliest memory, I was in elementary school, and I was having a hard time in my life at that moment. And I remember a teacher talked about this, children's theater program and a story that they were going to, put on a stage. And she told the story of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I just remember, fairies and elves and, a story about people who were mistaken identities. It all just sounds so fantastic. And I felt swept away and enchanted by that story. And I went home, and I remember talking to my dad about it. And we got the information for the auditions, and there's nobody in my family that was interested in theater or, very artistic. But he decided to take me to the auditions, and we didn't know what to expect or what it was. I just knew that there was a beautiful story that I'd heard in school, and I wanted to go check this out. I went to the auditions, and he gave me one word of advice, which was when I was auditioning to talk very loud so they could hear me.
Classic.
And yeah, and I was a very shy kid and an introvert, but I took that piece of advice and I read the lines. It was a little cold reading, and I read as loudly as I could, and then I got the role of Puck. and I just loved it so much. So I felt like that was a a really beautiful, healthy way for me to escape into like an enchanted story in a time in my life when I really needed that escape.
Nice. So the children's program, that was part of the GCT organization.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
nice.
even know if it still exists, but they used to have a, children's component to this.
Yeah, they do. They do youth productions every summer.
Oh,
So
okay.
the age ranges, but they do still do it. I remember doing uh, the Emperor's New Clothes, or I think that's what it's called. It's the one where the king goes around naked and he tells
That's
everyone.
it.
That's a classic. It was fun. Yeah, the youth productions are a lot of fun. Um, so, were you involved in GCT beyond that? Like when you got older, did you continue doing productions with GCT or even at the high school?
Yes. Wow. I did so many. So I think after A Midsummer Night's Dream, I kind of stopped for a while. And then somehow, I think when I was in middle school, I had heard about A Christmas Carol. I don't remember if it was from a friend or not, but I went. Shoot, I'm remembering something. So I went, and I think it was already all cast, but I approached, I think it might have been Tim Groth, and said, do you have any roles that, could I do this too? And he recognized me from playing Puck like 3 or 4 years earlier, and
Nice.
he said, oh yeah, we'll make room for you. And I was like, wow, thank you. So I had some, I don't know, I was gonna say extra role. It's been a while. I haven't been involved in theater for like 20 years, so I'm like not even adept at the lingo anymore. But I had a very, very small role, but that hooked me back in. I did so much stuff. I was in Our Town. I was in Little Women. I was in I feel like saying off a list of what all the productions I was in is a really boring thing to do. But let's just say that I did a lot. Yeah, and it
Okay.
was fun.
Do you have I mean, do you have any special memories from those times at all, or uh, I know you said it was 20, you know, it was a while ago, so.
Yeah, I've got a few. One of my favorite productions was Our Town. I played Emily Webb, and I was a freshman in high school when I did that. And I remember there's a part where Emily has to kiss her husband, and they're getting married, and
Oh.
I'd never had my first kiss yet. So I had to do this, my first kiss, in a rehearsal, and my dad was also in the show. So he's in there, and I know like this, as you know, GCT is pretty chaste. So this was not like, this was a peck on the lips, no big deal. But for, a 15-year-old girl who had never done this before, it was like a really big deal.
Absolutely.
So I remember the weirdness and trying to act like I was cool, but my heart was pounding the whole time. And doing it for my dad was weird. And another memory I have, there's so many, but one more that I have that really sticks out. I think this might have actually been Christmas Carol. So I was very sick at the time. I think I must have had the flu or something. And I was always working during high school, and I was always involved in many things. So I was, always busy and pretty tired and running from one thing to the next. And at this time I was sick. And, I had makeup on, and I had a wig on, and I had a heavy coat for the costume. And we were doing cast photos. And I remember standing up on stage for a long time with all these people in this heavy costume and feeling sick and tired, and the lights are shining, or, the people are taking photos.
Right.
And I passed out
Oh no.
on the stage right during that moment. And when I opened my eyes and looked up, I had all of these people who are in, 19th century, I think, century clothing. And I was like, where am I? What's happening?
That's pretty
It
good.
took a minute to realize, where I was. So that was an interesting one.
Yeah. Good times at GCT.
Yeah.
We've got a few people tuning in, a few more people. So Natalie Tyrell Martin says, "So proud of my GHS class of 1998 friend. Hello, Nikki."
Hey,
And
Natalie.
Scott Tinnermeyer says, "Hi, Nikki from Scott and Julie Tinnermeyer. Love seeing you
Oh,
live." And we are
wow.
live, so we invite you, if you're watching, to leave a question or comment for Nikki, and we'll be watching those throughout the conversation. So after you graduated from good old GHS, you went on to ONU in Ada and studied theater. You studied abroad in Scotland, and it sounds like you were on a boat for a little bit. So can you
I was.
tell us a little bit about those things and what that was like?
Okay. So ONU is a very small school that's literally in the middle of a cornfield in northwestern Ohio. But they have an excellent theater program, and they would bring artists in from all over the world to, put on these productions, production designers and directors, musical directors and whatnot. Um, it was a really, really great program, but it was only, I'm trying to remember, I think ONU was either 1 hour or 2 hours away from Galleon. So culturally speaking, that school and that location was very similar to Galleon, and I knew I wanted to, branch out and see a little more of the world. So I applied for a study abroad program at the conservatory in Edinburgh, and it was amazing. I worked with a bunch of young actors from all over the UK in that program, and all we did was body work and voice work and text work for acting. So that was really intensive and amazing. And then I went back to school, and then I should also say that the reason I was able to participate in these extraordinary experiences also goes right back to an experience I had on GCT, which was a life-changing moment for me, because I was, I can't remember which show it was, but I was in high school. And like I said, I was always working and doing a lot of things, very busy. And again, I got sick. And it's weird to tell another sick story because I'm generally a pretty healthy person, but I was very sick. And there was a woman involved in the production. I'm not going to say her name just for the sake of her privacy, although I don't think she would, mind this, but just in case. Then her son was in the show with me, and she saw that I was, struggling, and she said, you should go to the doctor. And I wasn't able to go to the doctor because we didn't have health insurance, and she eventually kind of figured that out. And she realized that I was a student who could use some extra help in life financially. And she introduced me to a man who changed my life because he became a private benefactor. So Galleon was very supportive to me, and I won lots and lots of scholarships, and I was eligible for government grants and whatnot. But I worked very hard to get every penny I could to pay for school. But and I think I had 85% of my college education financed at that point when this benefactor came into the mix. But because he, was interested in supporting my education and my future, that extra support was what was allowed me to do these extraordinary study abroad programs. So the second one that you mentioned, the semester at sea, was a shipboard program. I can't remember the cost, but quite expensive. So all of the students I met on that, it was a interesting experience because not only did I go all over the world, let's see, it was Morocco, Egypt, Russia, Norway, Spain, Greece. I think it was like 9 countries. So you study on the ship,
Wow. And
then the ship would go to the next port in the next country, and you get off the ship and you would go explore the country for 2 to 4 days, whatever the length of time was you had. So you were constantly studying, but also exploring. So it was an amazing way to see the world beyond Galleon and ONU. But it was also amazing on another level, because not only was I experiencing culture all over the world in these different countries, but I was also experiencing an interesting perspective on American class, because I, grew up with very little means, but all of the students on this ship were able to afford this extraordinary tuition because they came from very, very wealthy backgrounds. And to be on a ship with those students in that length of time taught me how different right away that my upbringing was, and some of the experiences that many people I have growing up in a town like Gallion versus students who are very affluent, what their life experience is like.
Right.
So I'd say ONU and the conservatory and semester at sea were incredibly expanding mind and emotionally expanding experiences for me.
Absolutely. It sounds incredible. I mean, wow. Traveling the world by sea. It sounds like
Yeah.
an amazing adventure.
Yeah.
We've got more people saying hello. Hi, Nikki, love from Aunt B, Uncle Tom.
Oh, hi guys, love you.
And
Barbie. Okay.
we've got proud of you, love Aunt Midge.
Oh, love you too.
And Mark Stepro asks, is she single?
Oh my gosh, come on guys, we're supposed to be talking about the Gallion Community Theater. It's not a family reunion.
Right. Wow. So that all sounds really amazing. So at this point, after ONU, you kind of sidestepped from the world of theater to the world of film when you were pursuing your master's at Columbia University, where you received a lot of awards and fellowships for your work. Can you share about what kind of led to that transition to the film world, and what was that time of your life like for you?
I think it was a few different things that led to the transition. One, I started to realize that I might be a director and not an actor, because at some point in undergrad, I started to think, well, if I was the director, I would do it this way or that. And then when I started realizing that I was thinking that way, I thought, maybe I am supposed to be a director, then I'm, thinking this way. And I love storytelling so much that I just wanted to have a bigger role in it and not just play a single part. I love that feeling of getting lost in a story, whether I'm an actor or just an audience member. But I also grew to love the experience of shaping a story and delivering a special experience for someone. But I realized in theater, when you do that, it's so much work. And the magical thing is when it's done, it's ephemeral, which gives it an aliveness that's really beautiful and powerful and special. But also when it's done, it's done. You have no record of it really, besides your, mementos and memories. And I think that's both what's special, but that's also what started to frustrate me, because I thought, if I'm going to put this amount of work and effort into something, I want it to last, and I want as many people as possible to be able to, participate in it or, enjoy it. I also realized that the theater crowd is not typically, it's not a medium for the masses generally,
Right.
GCT tickets for the most part, for hopefully most people, are affordable, but Broadway is very expensive, and I did not want to speak to an affluent audience. I wanted to speak to people who were closer to the upbringing that I had, which continues to be, a driving goal of mine. So I decided to shift into cinema for those reasons. But then when I went to New York, first of all, I'll tell a little anecdote about you asked me what the transition was like.
Yeah.
So my husband, Mark Stepro, who is also, a Gallion High alum, he and my brother, Steve Paluga, and my brother, one of my brother's friends, we drove to New York right before I started grad school. And I think I'd been to New York one time before that. I figured out, found a roommate online. So I'd never met her in person before we went there. We found the apartment. We pulled up late at night, and it's a 5-floor walk up to get to my apartment. So I meet my new roommate that night. She's not a student, because this is not like student housing. It's just an apartment I found on the internet. And when I got into the apartment in my little teeny tiny bedroom, because everything's very cramped in New York, I got sick to my stomach. and thought I was going to pass out and thought, well, what am I doing? And then my brother's friend and my now husband carried all my stuff up 5 flights of stairs to move me in. So but then the next day I was fine, and I felt like I was home in New York, and the program was amazing, and I knew where I was supposed to be. Started as a directing concentrate, but then was getting a lot of attention for my writing, and for multiple reasons decided I'd pursue the writing track.
Right. And from your bio, you wrote something called The Swiss Village, which won several awards. I'm curious to know a little bit about that. Was that kind of like maybe a pivotal point in your studies, your academic career?
It's a very intuitive question, because you're exactly right. That was a huge pivotal moment for me. So how that script came about was I was in a screenwriting class that I had to take. No matter whether you were a directing concentrate, a producing concentrate, or a screenwriting concentrate, everybody had to take like a beginner's writing class and write one script. So I was sitting in this classroom with all these students who also at Columbia University, people from all over the world in my class. And again, most of the students come from very moneyed backgrounds with very, impressive pedigrees. So I was feeling very kind of insecure about my more humble, start in life. And, somebody said they wanted to adapt Madame Bovary in the class. And I was like, I don't know what Madame Bovary is. This person went to Yale. It was just like, I don't know what they're writing. It was like, stories about ennui and stuff. And I was sitting in that class trying to figure out what I'm writing, and I started to have this memory of a moment that happened in real life where, I grew up in a interesting little business that no longer exists there in Galleon, but I know many, many, many people remember it. It's called the Swiss Village. So my grandparents owned it. It was a bar and a lake and motel rooms and a trailer park. So I think we lived there, at least until I was, I think around 10, 9 or 10. But anyway, when I was very young, there was like an old rusty swing set that we weren't supposed to play on. And we're told not to play it. And I was sitting in the screenwriting class in Columbia, and I was just zoning out in my head, as I tend to do, daydream. And I was thinking about this time when we're not supposed to play on that. And my sister and I ran over and played on it. And then we had to jump off before we got caught. And I ran back to our trailer. And then she started saying, Nikki, come back. And I ignored her because I was being a little brat. I mean, I might have been 5 years old or something. Mm-hmm. I was being a brat. And finally, I turned around. And when I turned around, she'd fallen off the swing set and cut her head, and half of her scalp was peeled over, and blood was going down her face.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I ran to get my mom, and they rushed her to the hospital, and I, was left behind. And I remember thinking, oh my God, is she gonna die because I didn't turn around? And I felt so selfish and bad, But I remember having this feeling and just feeling so bad about that moment and wishing that I'd turned around faster. My sister's okay, by the way. She's totally fine.
Good.
But I remember sitting in that classroom and thinking about that, feeling bad. And then it occurred to me, the way I'm remembering this actual event feels like a movie scene. And also something about this memory is bothering me so much because I feel bad about it. And then I started to write another scene and another scene and another scene. And the whole thing just evolved into a story about my experience growing up in that trailer park, but with this like supernatural element, because I love horror stories and the horror genre. Is how, eventually I started working on a show called Ash vs. Evil Dead. But it turned into this very poetic, sort of autobiographical story, and was me, I think, also trying to reconcile with my background and my upbringing and where I was finding myself in life, and trying to just find my own voice and my own identity. And I had a teacher in that class who was a brilliant writer. I've since worked with him professionally, but he helped me cultivate that story and was a tremendous mentor. And so that script and that story that started in Galleon, Ohio, and my experiences growing up in that trailer park is what got me every single thing that I've done professionally leads back to that script. that I've, wrote in film school.
Right, right. Stemming from a daydream you had in class. Wow.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, well, yeah, it was like a memory that felt like a dream, that felt like a movie scene, and so it was just
right.
that was the initial spark of where the
Wow.
whole story kind of unfolded from.
Very interesting. We've got more people saying hello. Hello from Kathy Carroll. Uh, Kyler Ratcliffe is tuning in. Hello, Kyler. Polly Eakin says hello, Nikki, from Brad and Polly Eakin. Um, and, okay. Scott asks, did you play Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz? I think you did.
Ah!
I think you may have. All
Nope.
right. So, you've seen a lot of success in school. Nowadays, you're living in LA with your family and writing for shows like the OA on Netflix, shows with ABC, TNT, and more. What is that like? What are some of the most rewarding experiences that you have in your career nowadays? What are some of your more challenging experiences? What is Nikki up to these days?
um, yes. So every show that I've worked on, it's every show is different. Every show, just like community theater productions, right? Like everybody knows the general format of like rehearsing, putting the show on, cast party afterwards. It has the experience is a natural arc. It's the same thing is true for creating a TV show or being part of creating a TV show. It's just much, much bigger and a lot of money involved. What the heck am I talking about? I'm totally rambling and I've spaced out on the question.
That's okay. I was just interested in hearing what working with these networks on these shows is like.
Okay, thank you.
Because I know, too, you've served in different capacities as well, not just screenwriting, I do believe. I was looking at your IMDb page. So I don't know what it's like in the back rooms of these shows. What is it like?
It's okay, so let me just tell you the basics.
Sure.
So everything I've done, so in the writing, TV writing world, it's very hierarchical, and there's separate, different, like, I'm gonna say layers, but levels of being a writer. So you start out at the beginning, and then you go to the top, and there's like a range. When you first start, you're just learning the ropes, and you're contributing ideas, and hopefully you're writing good scripts. And then as you work your way up the ranks, you start taking on producing responsibilities. And those things can, on a smaller scale, it's like helping choose costumes, weighing in on locations. If an actor has a problem with a line, you can help them, rewrite it to, collaborate with them and find a solution. And then when you go, to the top levels, you're figuring out things like how to pull creative elements into the show to get something made, major casting decisions. If you're creating the show, you're writing the first script, you're imagining, you have the long view vision for what it is. So there's a lot of different levels at which you can operate as a TV writer. But the basics, I guess the core of the process is, for the most part, pre the pandemic, you sit in a conference room or some space with your fellow writers and you just come up with the stories, right? So who are the characters? What's the theme? What are we trying to say? Are we trying to make people laugh? What's the thematic argument we're trying to make? All this kind of stuff. And you hash it out, and it's amazing, beautiful, I love the work, but it can also be really exhausting. It takes a lot of stamina, particularly, depending on the show you're on. But I would say my favorite experience of everything I've done was a show called The OA on Netflix, which was a very unique group of writers. They're just amazing voices. The creators would blow me away every day, and we had a lot of latitude to take creative risks, and it was very daring. And I would say that my greatest, the things that give me the most meaning are seeing the fans' reaction to that show, not just saying I like it, but somebody there was mythology in that show where you had to do particular movements with your body in order to make something happen. And I tend to think a lot about mythology when I'm writing shows. And I had this little worry in the back of my mind. I thought, well, if you have to do movements to make this thing happen, what about, in the spirit of the show is very inclusive for all people. And I thought, well, what if you're, a disabled person and you physically can't make these movements? Are you excluded from the idea of the story? And I remember thinking about it, but what happens sometimes when you're in a writer's room, like, you have so much stuff to think about. It's hard to, like, get everything. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, kind of that ship has sailed, so we're just going to move on, whatever. But it was always something that bothered me. But after the show was aired, I remember seeing there's a big fan campaign. Got canceled after 2 seasons. There's a big fan campaign to try to bring it back because it meant so much to people. And I remember seeing someone online record themselves who was in a wheelchair and it seemed like maybe they had cerebral palsy, and they had restricted movement, but they still did the movements to the best of their ability. And I was so moved by that. And I thought, this is worth all of the stress, and all of the work, to see that person just included themselves in the story in like a real way. And I thought, as a storyteller, people often tell you, thanks for the gift of your storytelling. But when you see somebody respond in that way, it's like you just remember why storytelling is so powerful and magical, and why it can, matter and really, really have a difference in somebody's life.
That is beautiful, and it is wonderful to hear how thoughtfully you approach your screenwriting and storytelling. And it's no wonder that the shows you work on are so impactful for people. So,
well, that's very kind of you to say.
We've got more people saying hello. Victoria Arlen says, "Hi, Nikki. I played your mom in Our Town. So much fun." And,
and that was one of my favorite shows.
Oh, good. Alina Hunter says, "Great interview, Aunt Tink."
Hello, Antique.
Okay, so it's great to hear about your career. So when you look back from where you are now, how would you say that theater, the performing arts, and Galleon Community Theater have impacted your career and impacted your life?
Well, clearly, I think that I've always had an instinct for storytelling, but the community theater was a place for that to really blossom and grow, and it was a safe place. And I got to give a special shout out to Tim Groff, because he was a real mentor figure for me. And he would give me acting books by Stanislavski, and he would, I think he took me to like a couple of like acting programs in Columbus, and he helped me get scholarships, and he just, he played a really profound role in my life. So I think the Galleon Community Theater, it was just a very nurturing place for me to develop something that was very, I think, innate in myself. So yeah, I think that it's hard to imagine how my path would have led to where I am right now if it hadn't been for the Galleon Community Theater, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our town Galleon is extraordinarily lucky to have this theater. And every time I see the outside the building and that sign, I'm just so proud. And I think that it just looks amazing. And I know that our town is so also into sports, so I think the performing arts can get, and arts in general really get short shrift. My husband is a drummer and I'm a writer, and we make our living as artists. And so I don't know, any kids out there thinking like, yay for football and sports, don't want to, denigrate that at all. I'm writing a sports show right now. But wow, the arts can be so healing and so important. And I'm so proud of you guys for putting on this fundraiser and, doing what you're doing to try and save the theater.
We appreciate that. We agree. We agree that the community theater organization has a long-lasting impact on kids, on adults, and it's a great thing to have in the community. And I guess while we're on the topic, we are doing a fundraising campaign to help preserve the theater through next summer. So if you are able and willing, we would ask to visit this website address, galleontheater.org/donate. And if you are able to offer any kind of financial support, we would really appreciate it. And you'd be helping us continue to impact people's lives like Nicki Paluga here and so many others for generations to come. And speaking of, would you have, Nicki, any advice for someone young, maybe someone in high school like you once were, who is looking to pursue their dream in acting or writing or just the arts in general? Because it can be tough, I do believe, to kind of pursue the arts as a career in some ways.
Yeah, it is. It is tough. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of perseverance. It takes a lot of, you got to know that you really want it, because it is, it can be a tough place to crack in, to get into, but it's not impossible. And you just have to put the work into it. And you just got to be kind to people and nice at every step of the way, because I think that I've had so much support. Like, even look at the people who have, chimed in for this interview, like, there's so much love and support and kindness here, and it's a really great energy to participate in. So you want to give that energy back to people too, and they will naturally just kind of help you along the way. What else? I would say, oh man, with acting, that's tough. Like I, as a writer producer now, part of my job is casting, and I watch many, many auditions, and, you've just got to be so brave and have so much heart and be willing to really put yourself out there and be vulnerable. So I guess the best advice I can give is just, I don't know, it seems so generic and so not like great advice, but really love what you do and hold on to that, because it will protect you and it will give you the perseverance that you need to succeed.
Absolutely. And speaking of everyone who's chiming in, we've got Jerusha Walker saying hi from the Walkers. Thank you for sharing your story. And we've got Bill Stepro and his family who want to say hello to you.
Okay. I feel like I'm taking up too much space saying hi to my family. I love you all, but I would say happy early Father's Day to my dad, Phil Paluga, and to my father-in-law, Bill Stepro.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Over here, if I may.
So just, as part of the conversation, is there anything that you think an organization like Galleon Community Theater could be doing better for students and younger people in general in our community? Do you think the Galleon community as a whole could be doing something better, or is already doing something for, students in town? Just to get your thoughts. I'd be interested, because you're well-traveled, you've been all over the world, and you're living in the West Coast, so any thoughts to that?
Yeah, I would say a couple of different things. I would say, I think, right now with the pandemic and the current economic insecurity, that people, may not have a lot to donate, but if you can, like I was talking about the importance of positive energy and goodwill, like a little bit, goes a long way. So give if you can. I would say to the audience members of the Young Community Theater. Now, I directed a 2-woman show called Grace and Glory once at the community theater, and it was I graduated from ONU a quarter early, and I was waiting to see if I was going to get accepted into film school or not. And during that little weird space of time, the community theater very graciously allowed me to kind of test out some directing muscles and learn and grow in that area, and put on this little 2-woman show. And while I don't know why this has stuck with me for so long, but while I was directing that, like during a rehearsal or after rehearsal or something, it was right before the show was going up. The phone in the front office rang, and I answered it, and I said, Galleon Community Theater. And some woman, I don't remember her name, or she even told me her name, but she was asking about the show that I was directing. And she said, I'm interested in tickets, but I need to know if there are any curse words in this because I don't listen to curse words. And that bothered me so much. And to this day, because I thought there are so many worse, things to worry about in the world other than to take a moral stance on curse words. I respect everybody has their language barriers and whatever, but it really made me feel, after putting all that work that I did into that show and the actors and, everybody on the crew and everybody putting to hear that was very off-putting to me because I thought that's a very presumptuous and very moral stance to take. And if you don't want to come watch this show because we say damn or hell or whatever, then don't come. But it scared me because I thought it was evidence of a certain closed-mindedness that I thought is dangerous. And I think that what I would love to see at the Galleon Community Theater is, while for me it provided, growing up, oftentimes a safe haven to escape and to just, disappear into a story, I think storytelling can also be a tremendous tool for instigating important conversations and exploring things and not always making safe choices. So I think it would be amazing if the audience who goes to the community theater would open their minds and go in there to see that maybe it's not just about, hearing all the talented singers and musicians and actors do their thing, but here's some ideas that maybe you're not typically exposed to. And I think that, looking back on it all, had I known that I was a writer, had I had an outlet for being a writer, I'm naturally, I'm not great with prose, but for whatever reason, I can write stage plays and stories for screen. I have a natural affinity for that format. I would have loved to have written a play, for the theater to put on. So maybe there's a student or a person, in Galleon right now who has that kind of a feeling or an idea they want to explore, that they could, if there was, that would be a great thing to do right now because people can write, but you can't, and so something more experimental, something a little more out of the box, something that says what is Galleon? Who are we as a community? And what kind of story does this community maybe need to have right now that would open up a provocative, or interesting kind of space for us to all be in dialogue together? I don't know. I think that would be extraordinary.
Yeah, that's wonderfully put. And there's absolutely no better place for that kind of dialogue to happen than the stage, at least in a town like this especially. So I really appreciate that feedback. We've got more people tuning in. Michelle Paluga Kruger says, great interview. I'm so proud of you today and always. Also, you're welcome for being the clumsy punk that inspired your Swiss Village script.
Oh, yeah.
And then we've got Beth Ann texting in, who happens, I think, to be over here. She says, Nikki was my mom in Carousel. I was Baby Snow. So it's a family reunion.
Wow, this feels like a family reunion. I mean, I'm in conversation with my real family through this, but also my theater family. Wow.
It's a good time. It's a good time. And we appreciate everyone who's tuning in. Thank you for tuning in, and continue. Feel free to leave questions for Nikki as we're kind of wrapping up here towards the end of our conversation. Now for some lighter questions. LA is on the other side of the country. Do you get back to Galleon very often? Is there anything you miss about being in town?
I try to get back, my family and I, at least twice a year if we can. We're hopeful sometimes to get back more. We're hoping to come back in May this past May, but with the pandemic, hasn't been possible, which is sad.
Right.
I guess I was gonna say the thing I always think of when I come home is my Aunt Barbie's house in her yard, but she's not actually in Galleon. But I always kind of conflate. She's very close to New Washington. I'm thinking about my brother. I was talking with him about this question earlier, and he said, "Tell him that you miss the cost of the houses." Because the cost of living in LA is so different.
Yeah.
So I miss it's a little, the cost of living in Galleon for sure, and I miss the lack of traffic in Galleon, and I'm going to give a very, very honest answer to this. I miss in Galleon that there is a way of talking and communicating among people that's evidenced right now in this interview, right? Like people are chiming in and supporting and saying hi, and it's very casual and informal, and you're passing things, so that spirit, exists on the football field, that spirit exists in the schools, it exists in the community theater, it exists in the churches. And it's a community spirit that's very soul sustaining and nurturing. And it's often hard to feel that same way in an urban environment like New York City or Los Angeles. Of course, you've got your friends in your pocket and whatever, but it's not quite the same. But I will say that also when I go, one of the things I struggle with when I go home is I do feel a certain kind of sexism that I feel very restrained by, and it makes me sad, and I think it's very prevalent. And when I come back to Los Angeles, I feel a little freer. So sexism, classism, racism, these are the things that when I come home, and hear people talking certain ways, I really profoundly struggle with. I would say like my feelings about Galleon is like it has a special, unique beauty that's profound, and like I would love to try to capture the spirit and the essence in my, the words and the stories I write, and I try. But it also has a side I think that requires some some reflection on the community's part in order to be more inclusive and embrace it, embrace all people. And that kind of stuff is what, I write in my storytelling. It would be epic and amazing to see the Galleon Community Theater also embrace that kind of a space. And if you guys ever do, I will be here to participate if you wanted that participation. So
wonderful. Yeah. Well, we appreciate that. And I guess jumping off of that, as someone who lives in the world of screenwriting, are there any plays or theater productions that you would like to see on GCT's stage?
I wish I had an awesome answer for that, but I am so not in the theater scene anymore. And it's been all TV and movies for me for about 20 years. But I guess I don't want to keep saying, repeating myself, but I would just say, I think that this time in our country is a time of real kind of moral reckoning. And I think that it's a great time to exercise imagination and love. So I would look for content that supports that direction. And also I would nurture and support, if there are any budding writers, in the community, whatever they want to, write about, that would be, I don't know if the Galleon Community Theater has ever done an original play like that by somebody in the community. That would be incredible.
I can't recall, Beth. Do you know if GCT's ever done?
Not that I know of, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic idea, and Beth's on the board, so now's the perfect time for that kind of thing, like you said. So, we will look forward to that, absolutely. And I guess kind of wrapping things up here, what's next for you? Are there any exciting projects on the horizon? You had mentioned joining the Poor People's Campaign. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, thank you for bringing this up. So, somebody I work with recently brought this campaign to my attention, and it has just grabbed my heart so powerfully. I left the church about 20 years ago, and when I hear the Reverend Barber speak, who is leading this campaign, I feel my heart opening up in ways that feel very profound and powerful. So this is a very inclusive, I'm gonna put this okay, is it backwards?
Nope,
Right now?
it's
No, okay,
the right way. Yep.
This is a campaign. They're actually doing a digital moral march on Washington tomorrow morning. And it's talking about a national call for moral revival in our country. And what has so drawn me to this, having grown up in an impoverished, situation myself, is that this campaign welcomes and includes everyone and talks about the importance of the Black community and poor whites coming together at this moment in our country to make a better world. And I love the fact that my name is on the marquee. I'm so flattered, I'm so honored, but I also feel a little guilty to be taking up that prime real estate that feels like perhaps the most important real estate in the whole town of Gallion. So I'm going to ask you guys to do me a favor now, which is take my name down after this interview and put up this Poor People's Campaign. I'll send you the exact language. Join the Poor People's Campaign. It's a national call for moral revival. I know everybody has their different politics, but this all it is about love. That's it, guys. It's about love. So it's tomorrow morning at 6 p.m. if you go to www.june2020.org. So I mentioned that because it's about right now I'm thinking a lot about class in my own climb up, not just from GCT to, working in Los Angeles and Hollywood, but I'm thinking about the journey I've taken from the Swiss Village Trailer Park to this Zoom interview right now in, Los Angeles. And I think that talking about issues of class and helping lift people up out of poverty, especially during the pandemic and the economic stress that's happening right now, has never been more important than now, So I'm going to send this to you guys, put on there. And then when after this, hoping you can put Black Lives Matter up there as well and support the Black community.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you taking your time. We appreciate your beautiful perspective on on life, on what's happening now, on the different ways that we can be voices for people, for those who need it the most right now. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for everyone tuning in. That's been our conversation. We'll be closing the live stream event with another piano performance from Mr. Adam Jarvis. So without further ado, we will be having Adam attend to the piano. We will be saying goodbye to Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who's been joining us tonight. So without further ado, here is Adam Jarvis. There you have it, folks. That's been our Week 7 opening night live event. Thanks again to Nicky Paluga for joining us. Thanks to you for joining us. And thank you all for everyone who's contributed financially to the theater's fundraising campaign. Again, if you're able and willing to donate, this is the address to visit. And just as well, if you're wanting to get involved with the Poor People's Campaign, we'll be passing along that information that Nikki is sending us. Again, thank you all. Have a great night. Peace.